Chapter 6 Ruth. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Cynthia Lyons. Ruth by Elizabeth Cleghorn Gaskell. Chapter 6 Troubles Gather About Ruth. The next day the weather was brave and glorious, a perfect bridal of the earth and sky, and every one turned out of the inn to enjoy the fresh beauty of nature. Ruth was quite unconscious of being the object of remark, and in her light, rapid passings to and fro, had never looked at the doors and windows, where many watchers stood observing her, and commenting upon her situation or her appearance. "She's a very lovely creature," said one gentleman, rising from the breakfast table to catch a glimpse of her as she entered from her morning's ramble. "Not above 16, I should think. Very modest and innocent looking in her white gown." His wife, busy administering to the wants of a fine little boy, could only say, without seeing the young girl's modest ways, and gentle downcast countenance, "Well, I do think it's a shame such people should be allowed to come here. To think of such wickedness under the same roof. Do come away, my dear, and don't flatter her by such notice." The husband returned to the breakfast table. He smelt the broiled ham and eggs, and he heard his wife's commands. Whether smelling or hearing had most to do in causing his obedience, I cannot tell. Perhaps you can. "Now, Harry, go and see if nurse and baby are ready to go out with you. You must lose no time this beautiful morning." Ruth found Mr Bellingham was not yet come down, so she sallied out for an additional half-hour's ramble, flitting about through the village, trying to catch all the beautiful sunny peeps at the scenery between the cold stone houses, which threw the radiant distance into aerial perspective far away. She passed by the little shop, and just issuing from it came the nurse and baby and little boy. The baby sat in placid dignity in her nurse's arms, with the face of queenly calm. Her fresh, soft, peachy complexion was really tempting, and Ruth, who was always fond of children, went up to coo and to smile at the little thing, and after some peep-boing, she was about to snatch a kiss, when Harry, whose face had been reddening ever since the play began, lifted up his sturdy little right arm, and hit Ruth a great blow on the face. "Oh, for shame, sir!" said the nurse, snatching back his hand. "How dare you do that to the lady who is so kind as to speak to Sissy?" "She's not a lady," said he, indignantly. "She's a bad, naughty girl. Mamma said so, she did. And she shan't kiss our baby." The nurse reddened in her turn. She knew what he must have heard, but it was awkward to bring it out, standing face to face with the elegant young lady. "Children pick up such notions, ma'am," said she at last, apologetically, to Ruth, who stood white and still, with a new idea running through her mind. "It's no notion, it's true, nurse, and I heard you say it yourself. Go away, naughty woman," said the boy, in infantile vehemence of passion, to Ruth. To the nurse's infinite relief, Ruth turned away, humbly and meekly, with bent head and slow, uncertain steps. But as she turned, she saw the mild, sad face of the deformed gentleman, who was sitting at the open window above the shop. He looked sadder and graver than ever, and his eyes met her glance with an expression of deep sorrow. And so, condemned alike by youth and age, she stole with timid step into the house. Mr Bellingham was awaiting her in the sitting room. The glorious day restored all his buoyancy of spirits. He talked gaily away, without pausing for a reply, while Ruth made tea, and tried to calm her heart, which was yet beating with the agitation of the new ideas she had received from the occurrence of the morning. Luckily for her, the only answer required for some time were monosyllables. But those few words were uttered in so depressed and mournful a tone, that at last they struck Mr Bellingham with surprise and displeasure, as the condition of mind they unconsciously implied did not harmonise with his own. "Ruth, what is the matter this morning? You really are very provoking. Yesterday, when everything was gloomy, and you might have been aware that I was out of spirits, I heard nothing but expressions of delight. To-day, when every creature under heaven is rejoicing, you look most deplorable and woebegone. You really should learn to have a little sympathy." The tears fell quickly down Ruth's cheeks, but she did not speak. She could not put into words the sense she was just beginning to entertain of the estimation in which she was henceforward to be held. She thought he would be as much grieved as she was at what had taken place that morning. She fancied she should sink in his opinion, if she told him how others regarded her. Besides, it seemed ungenerous to dilate upon the suffering of which he was the cause. "I will not," she thought, "embitter his life. I will try and be cheerful. I must not think of myself so much. If I can but make him happy, what need I care for chance speeches?" Accordingly, she made every effort possible to be as light-hearted as he was; but somehow, the moment she relaxed, thoughts would intrude, and wonders would force themselves upon her mind, so that altogether she was not the gay and bewitching companion Mr Bellingham had previously found her. They sauntered out for a walk. The path they chose led to a wood on the side of a hill, and they entered, glad of the shade of the trees. At first it appeared like any common grove, but they soon came to a deep descent, on the summit of which they stood, looking down on the tree tops, which were softly waving far beneath their feet. There was a path leading sharp down, and they followed it. The ledge of rock made it almost like going down steps, and their walk grew into a bounding, and their bounding into a run, before they reached the lowest plain. A green gloom reigned there, and it was the still hour of noon. The little birds were quiet in some leafy shade. They went on a few yards, and then they came to a circular pool overshadowed by the trees, whose highest boughs had been beneath their feet a few minutes before. The pond was hardly below the surface of the ground, and there was nothing like a bank on any side. A heron was standing there motionless, but when he saw them, he flapped his wings and slowly rose, and soared above the green heights of the wood up into the very sky itself, for at that depth the trees appeared to touch the round white clouds which brooded over the earth. The speedwell grew in the shallowest water of the pool, and all around its margin, but the flowers were hardly seen at first, so deep was the green shadow cast by the trees. In the very middle of the pond the sky was mirrored clear and dark, a blue which looked as if a black void lay behind. "Oh, there are water lilies!" said Ruth, her eye catching on the farther side. "I must go and get some." "No, I will get them for you. The ground is spongy all round there. Sit still, Ruth. This heap of grass will make a capital seat." He went round, and she waited quietly for his return. When he came back, he took off her bonnet without speaking, and began to place his flowers in her hair. She was quite still while he arranged her coronet, looking up in his face with loving eyes, with a peaceful composure. She knew that he was pleased from his manner, which had the joyousness of a child playing with a new toy, and she did not think twice of his occupation. It was pleasant to forget everything except his pleasure. When he had decked her out, he said: "There, Ruth, now you'll do. Come and look at yourself in the pond. Here, where there are no weeds. Come." She obeyed, and could not help seeing her own loveliness. It gave her a sense of satisfaction for an instant, as the sight of any other beautiful object would have done, but she never thought of associating it with herself. She knew that she was beautiful.